without further ado, let's begin today's event with our keynote address by Mr. Achint Setia, VP Marketing at Myntra, one of the leading fashion e-commerce platforms in the country. Achint looks after the marketing vertical for Myntra, including brand, content, loyalty programs, and digital marketing. In his career spanning over 15 years, he's had rich experience across e-commerce, media, management consultancy, and software development. A space enthusiast and a passionate student of human creativity. Welcome to the event, Achint. It gives me great pleasure to invite you on our virtual stage so that you can share your insights on growth hacks that help increase lifetime customer loyalty and app retention.
Thank you so much, Pradyut. Am I clearly audible?
You are audible, Achint. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So wonderful. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who's listening to this session from different parts of the world. It's an honor to be here to present some of my learnings, on this very, very exciting topic and a very relevant topic in today's times on customer loyalty and app retention. And it's an ocean, right? I mean, it'll be unfair to say that I as an individual can do justice to sharing the depth of what this topic entails, but I'll try to keep it at a level where I can give you some insights and some takeaways by the time we get to the end of this conversation at a higher level, at least to go with. So let me quickly share my screen and sort of get into the conversation and look forward to feedback, questions from you, in the last few minutes where I'll be able to answer some of them. Okay. Is my screen visible?
It is visible, Achint.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So, growth hacks for loyalty and retention. It's one of my favorite topics personally, and the reason it is favorite is because I like the word hacks the most in this, and then growth following with that, because it is all about experimentation and knowing your customers well by trying out so many new things with them. And I'll just walk through that experience, what I've seen in a couple of industries before this, in the media industry and now in the e-commerce industry. But the beauty is that some of the fundamental principles of retention are common across the board, right? So you can just take it and apply to your industry and see how it works for your customers. But before we start, I think let me share 4 pictures with you. What is common in these 4, if you think about it? I know you can't answer the question, but you can probably put on chat. But for me, one of the things which is extremely similar in all of these 4 things, or 4 kinds of categories, if I must say, are how strongly they guard their territories, right? So the third one is Clash Royale game. If some of you are not aware of this, it's one of the highest engaged games in the world today. And everybody from Apple to a wild animal like a tiger to one of the best engaging games to one of the best streaming platforms in the world, how well they ensure that their territory, their customer base continues to be their most loyal advocates and continue to sort of work with them year after year after year, right? So that is why each of these are leaders or kings of their respective industries that they play in. But there are certain principles which are common across all of them, and how they think about this, how they sort of grow their customer base. They have different levers to doing that, either through great products or great content or great engagement or just, by force, right? In some cases, but they are able to do that job well in their own ways. So, as you think about retention and safeguarding your customer territory, it's important to understand what does retention really mean, how you can visualize it in a much better way. So found this to be a very interesting framework, for retention, which is retention can be looked at as 3 kinds of curves, right? There is a smiling curve, there is a flattening curve, and there's a declining curve. The declining curve is what I should start with first, which is what you see in the red here, where your customer retention continues to go down, and sort of the depth of or the degree of decline sort of goes down over a period of time, but the decline continues. And over a period of time, the product may become redundant, or your platform experience may become redundant, and most of the people may churn out. This actually happens a lot with one-off successes with games where you have a high retention in the beginning, and a lot of customers then get bored with it and then they churn out. And depending on how long the games can sustain that, that will define the acuteness of this decline. But this is not a good space to be in, because effectively what you're saying is your product market fit is not very clear and customers don't want to come back to you beyond a point in time. The other is a flattening curve, where there is a customer base who has found some meaning in your product, and they continue to repeat in a same manner for a longer period of time, and you have a business proposition, right? So it means that you can still run that business and have and protect a core customer base, but they are not coming back more often, because the experience has not really fundamentally changed, how they feel about it. And that is where businesses which are on a fast growth trajectory, or want to become profitable, while also growing, have to start thinking actively about the third curve, which is the smiling curve, where, after an initial decline, where you see a lot of people sampling the product and then moving out, but there are a set of core users who you form who are actually then sticking on, they get more reasons to sort of stick on even more, and the curve starts to go up. Right? So that's the smiling curve. That's probably the best curve that you want your product or platform to see with its customers. So if you're on a declining curve, I think the idea is to think about how do you flatten that curve first before thinking about growth, and how do you make sure that your core customer base starts to come at least at some frequency, without churning or beyond a point. If you have a flattened curve, then the other way to think about this is how do you flatten the curve at a higher point? If you're flattening it at, let's say, a 30% retention, can you flatten it at a 35 or a 40% retention? And that's a bigger base with which you can sort of sustain your business with. And I'll talk about how to think about getting more people in this core user set as you move forward. And the last is, once you have the flattening curve, finding these hooks, finding these levers, and building love for the platform over a period of time to convert that into a smiling curve, right? So these are broadly the visual ways to envision, how you should think about retention. And the reason this is important is because of this, right? It's proven research that, customers who are retained for you give you far more value to your business than, acquiring a new customer. And, we know this is the time that most of the digital businesses are on a spree of acquiring customers, which is very important for growth. I mean, if you don't have a market share, you're dead in the digital world. But don't deprioritize that at the cost of, or don't prioritize that at the cost of retaining your existing customers. It's also a proven fact how important it is to get your profitability goals with the retained customers, because we have seen that your older customers give you far higher conversions in whichever industry you are in, whether it is renewal rates or whether it is, e-commerce conversion or some other industries. It is important that these customers actually have a good experience over a period of time, and you don't miss out on them in the excitement to acquire new guys. So I think the case for retention, most of us you're aware of, so I don't need to sort of educate on that, but it's a very strong mathematical business case, and to visualize that, think about plotting these customer journeys, and seeing where you stand on this funnel. So now if you just move forward and think about some of the learnings I wanted to share on what are the things to really consider as you think about increasing retention. There are 5 questions, right? And I'll talk about each of them one by one, right? Which I sort of framing for this audience and seeing, if we can synthesize, a lot of learning in these 5 very sharp questions. The first is, who's the power user that you are designing the experience for? And very important to understand what the definition of a power user is. A power user is someone who is a heavy adopter. They really care about your product. They are disproportionately better in terms of their engagement, in terms of how often they repeat with the platform versus the average user base, right? They are probably already on the smiling retention curve, or they are just on the verge of it. And most importantly, these are your most desired customers because they have already started to show the profitable behaviors that you need for your business from your customers. So identifying this base can be a small base as you start the business, maybe, maybe 1 to 2% of that base, and may grow to 10, 20% of the base, but will never be a very large part of your overall base, because, the 80-20 rule applies even here with the customers. But once you identify this base, then focus disproportionately on this base, right? And understand what are the use cases that work for them. Because if you start making this base go accelerate on their smiling curve journey, it is much easier to get a lot of other customers also, come and follow suit, because there is a network effect that will play out eventually. So that's the first thing to think about: who's the power user set. Before you design experiences for this set, I think this second question becomes important to think about: is what is the tipping point at which they convert in terms of their fundamental behaviors with the platform. Now, tipping point can mean different things in different industries, but at a very simplistic level, it is the point at which the retention or the stickiness improves significantly, and then holds on, right? So something will happen at a point where the proposition or the use case becomes extremely relevant to the customer, and that gives them a reason to come back again and again. So just to share a few examples across industries, right? If you look at Facebook, they had this tipping point coming when 7 friends connected in 10 days with each other, right? So they wanted everybody to sort of get the first 7 friends in the first 10 days, and they could see that the flywheel coming up to that. For someone like an e-commerce platform, it could be the first X number of purchases or the first X numbers of cycles that the customer has gone through, and then they know the entire life cycle of how e-commerce works. And post that, you will see a drastic shift in retention happening, with that consumer base. For a video destination, like an OTT destination, it could be for a show, for example, watching the first couple of episodes, after which that the retention curve will be very high. And that's why you see Netflix talking openly about this. They spend a lot of time in making sure that the first 2 episodes they crack well. And once people finish the first 2, they are likely to stick on more than people who exit after the first. Or it could be the number of shows that people watch, after which they start sticking to the platform itself, right? So there are different definitions to this in different industries, but it's important you identify your tipping point in your industry and sort of make sure that the levers for that tipping point are very, very clearly articulated in terms of what it means for people and your core user set. But once you have these 2 information, your core user set, your power users, and your tipping point, the next important thing to think about is, I have a lot of other users, my 80, 90, or 95% of the base. How do I shift them to becoming power users, right? And how do I take them closer to the tipping point, and maybe a lot of them would convert to become power users, right? So that's the other thing which a lot of times I've seen people leave out on, because they are too much focused on either the top of the funnel, getting more users, or very, very focused on the best users. But this 80% of the base, I think, which will form the majority of your business going forward from a future potential standpoint, I think is a very important base where you have to work very, very hard in their nascent stage to make them better customers or better users of your platform. Now, what are some of the things to think about as you do this? One of the areas is, or one of the hacks that I found out is plot the consumer journeys of the power user and of this user, and see what are the different drop-off points at different stages of this funnel, which would sort of give you indication of, okay, these are the specific areas where these users are normally dropping off, and maybe I can do something there to fix their experiences. These could also be called as the moments of truth for these customers, at which they form a very specific judgment about the product or the platform and take a decision either to stick on or to sort of drop off and never come back again. Again, it could be different things like, your first purchase experience on an e-commerce platform. It could be the time that you are making the payment and the payment not being successful. It could be the time when you are getting your first returns experience is not very good, and you realize you anyways had a lot of inhibition about e-commerce, and here it comes, in the first sale itself, you may not come back again very soon till someone convinces you. Or it could be a simple thing like you're not able to even understand how to surf a platform because it's too much for you as a new user. So there could be these different moments, and if you just plot the user journey and look at data to figure out, okay, how the drop-offs are happening, between a power user base and this base, you can pinpoint on areas where these moments of truth are coming alive for this customer. The other thing which I found very helpful is speaking to this base, the base of customers, and picking up this base very smartly, right? So one, pick up the power users and understand what's really working working for them qualitatively, even if data is not able to show some of those insights very clearly. And then pick up two other bases. One is your extreme detractors who hate your product, right? Who have either decided not to come, or they have come and they have never come back again, right? Or they have written something really bad about you on social, right? So find these customers and understand what went wrong, because they will give you insights which your best customers may never be able to tell you, right? It's really good critical feedback. And then pick up customers who are very, very strong advocates, right? Because they could share some things which you may not realize are your real strengths, or the real use case that will make a fundamental shift in your platform experience. And then look at these learnings qualitatively and add it to the data set, of the funnel view, and you can come back with more insights on what's working for the customer base. And then as you get some of these learnings, it's important to think about the incentives, the nudges, the platform experiences that you can create in this initial journey of these nascent users to get them closer to the tipping point. This could be, again, in an e-commerce platform, it could be additional discount coupons. It could be things like, moving you from the first to the second to the third purchase with clear incentives. It could be additional delighters that you get very, very early on in your journey where you feel, okay, the platform cares for me. And maybe it is something different, right? That strikes you as a customer. Or it could just be things like, assisting the customer through means where they are struggling, despite their best intent. And assisted shopping in the shopping world is one such experience that we've seen work with customers. So moving customers to the tipping point as fast as possible and as quickly as possible in their journeys will help you retain a lot more of these users than otherwise. So you've done that. And then I think the core question of loyalty and customer engagement with your best base comes, which is how do you ring fence and grow your retained users, your most desired users? Now, please understand, this will be a large base. I mean, even 2 to 20% of a large platform base is a lot of customers, right? So there will be some of them who are still very early in that journey. There will be some of them who are really, really the best customers, and the difference between them could be very high. We have seen the difference between our most valuable customer base, on Axis, could be as much as 8 to 10x in terms of their behaviors on the platform. But all of them are good customers for us, right? Because they have the potential to give us disproportionately more revenue on the platform. And the idea is, while you want to grow the ones early on in that journey to become even better customers, you also want to make sure that the better customers don't consider other options that often of your competitors. And there are a few things which I've seen work, or set of things that work collectively for this. But at the core of it is one theme: building emotional equity with these customers, right? Let them feel that you care for them and you understand them better than anyone else, right? And we've seen this in multiple examples, personalization, right? That's one area which really makes people feel that you know what they want. And personalization is not about showing them things that they like. It is a combination of what you show, how you show it, and when you show it, right? And all three are equally important. The what, the how, and the when, which is the right context to generate the appropriate trigger at the right point in time. And again, if you look at a lot of e-commerce platforms which give recommendations, I'll just talk about an example of what Myntra does with some of its customers to get their preferences so that we can give them better advice and better selection experiences going forward in their journey. But you see this, if you look at recommendations, even in the OTT world, for Netflix, for example, it just takes, they know they have just 90 seconds to give the recommendation. If you see the sort of the thumbnail that you see is very, very customized to you. And there's a lot of hard work and research that goes behind the scenes to get you the right picture, the right thumbnail, the right creative at the right time in your journey where your likelihood of conversion is the highest, right? So a lot of effort needs to go there in terms of not just understanding, but then experimenting and applying that for the customers. The second one is, around engaging the customers. And I think we see a lot of times engagement being linked to just content, and content is extremely important. I'll talk about that how with a case study on Myntra. But what is equally important with content is building communities. Because when content and communities come together, I think the two-way network effect becomes much stronger. And you have sort of hooked the customer in multiple ways than just hooking them through individual pieces of content. So if you're designing content experiences for your platforms, think about how you can get people from both the demand side, which is your customers, and people from supply side, which could be your partners or your vendors, come together and create some sort of a content marketplace. And we know that marketplaces are always able to create far more value than individual content providers. And that's something I've seen from an engagement standpoint that can create a flywheel of its own without you continuing to worry about the next piece of content that you should give it to your customers, every day. Next part is the rewards, which is a combination of the nudges you give to the customers. Number one, the aspirational privileges you set for the best customers, either through a loyalty program or otherwise, which makes everybody feel, okay, I have to get there. I really want to be like that because I need that privilege. And for that to happen, customers also know how to get there, right? So whether it is a journey through getting more points by doing certain things on the platform, or just showing certain kinds of behaviors which you have explicitly communicated with the customers and being very clear, okay, this is what I need you to do to get this privilege. And the last part is delighting them on and off, and giving these delighters, which really serve as a recall point for them. Yes, this platform did something for me, and I really value it and I really care for it. And the last one, I think, which is to my mind one of the most important ones, is feedback with the customers, right? So how do you actively listen and make them part of the problem-solving process, and not just hearing and solving it on their behalf? Because the kinds of problems we are in today are extremely complicated and complex, and it's actually very empowering for customers to feel that they are being listened, because and some of their suggestions are being taken, and you actively communicate it back that thanks for doing that for me. And the beta programs, the alpha programs, which many good ahead of the curve companies do, are actually very powerful in that context for you to ring fence and engage the space in more ways than just giving them money and cash and discounts. So this is, just to give you a perspective on what is some of the tricks to retain the best customers. Now, all of this requires, one very clear thing, which is creating a culture of experimentation, creating a culture of learning. And no one will have very clear answers. I think the use cases you will define for your customers may be similar to other use cases of your competitors, but they'll be far more nuanced with respect to the industry or the business that you are in. And it's important that you do a lot of these experiments and encourage your teams to ensure that they don't take their past laurels and sit on that for a long period of time, because things shape up very well. You are not just challenged by your own customers' expectations, you are challenged by what your competition is doing on a daily basis. And it's important to stay ahead of the curve and continuously provide new ways to making your customers feel engaged and feel happy. I wanted to share a couple of case studies on this, on what we are doing at Myntra, for you to get a perspective as examples. And this is not the best way or the only way of doing it, but probably could open up your mind on one of the ways you could think about ring fencing your existing users. So first, who are the power users for Myntra? These are fashion-forward audiences who are discerning about their choices. They know what they want, at least the direction in which they want to buy things, whether it's brands, whether it is trends, whether they want to look in a certain manner on a certain occasion, they have that point of view. They have keenness to learn fashion. I think they are not folks who know that I know everybody, but they know that I have to learn it. I want to invest my time in doing that. Loyalty for them is a combination of how well you know me, plus how well you make me feel, right? And the feeling part of it is very, very important, as important as giving a utility value to these customers and all customers for that matter, right? Everyone is an emotional human being at the end of the day. And the value they associate to the emotional equity is far more than just a utility equity over a period of time. And people are generally impatient, and so are our power users, right? They want immediate gratification, and there's an impulsive behavior which fashion as a category itself has. But our power users are super impulsive from that standpoint. And three things, as we think about them, we want them to kill their boredom, we want them to learn something new, and we want them to get inspired, right? These are the three sort of big goals that we look at when we think about engagement for these customers. And commerce and non-commerce, everything fits under this piece, right? Eventually, a lot of people browse fashion platforms just to kill boredom, right? And they may not want to buy something, but it's a good window shopping experience, sitting at home and seeing new dresses and new and good-looking people, and makes you feel good, right? That's also a bit of a dote. And on the four things that I spoke about, I'll talk about two specifically. One is personalization, and one is on content. Personalization again has many, many legs. I can't talk about all of them in this forum given the time constraint, but I'll show you one example of how we think about personalization. The biggest challenge today in a fashion e-commerce platform is the size and fit issue, right? And it's not a problem that has been solved for. There's a lot of work happening across the world on solving for this, but there are a few attempts that we have made uniquely on this one. One is launching something called as a size finder, which is what you see on the bottom left of the screen here, right over here. If you're a new customer and you want to buy something you're not able to find, right, you can actually click on this, and it'll ask you a bunch of questions on besides your demographic information, your height and weight, and your gender, which helps us get the first level of understanding of what you may be looking at, the brands that you like, and every brand has a unique size, even though the sizes mathematically are the same, but you know that every brand has slight nuances. And if you like a brand, then what is a typical fit that you wear from that brand, and that helps us also from the back end, with our ML algorithms match which are the other brands with similar sizes that you may be interested in. And lastly, what is your body shape and shoulder shape, which helps us understand, okay, this is the kind of dress or apparel that will be best fit for you, right? It's still not 100% answer, but it's closer to not having anything at all about the customer. And that helps us give you the right recommendation when you are actually coming and buying. You will see the most recommended size for you on this brand. You will see a recommendation from Myntra. That's one of the ways we look at solving this problem. The other is content, which is a big engagement lever for us, content and communities. And when we think about content, we look at content in context of four things. One is, of course, the situation or the context in which we are providing this content to the user, the relevance of this content, how it is giving an inspiration back to the consumer to do something or take some action, and at the same time creating some sort of impulse or feeding to the impulse that the consumer may have to take action immediately, right? So I'll just talk about these four aspects which help us define a content journey for a consumer. Context and contextualizing it everywhere, I think for us is a combination of what do we do on the browsing journey, how to give advice on specific occasions to customers, and creating topical conversations which are top of mind for consumers, in a particular period of time. So in browsing journeys, for example, when COVID happened, we did a lot of content in the normal consumer journey around quarantined at home, and a lot of casual wear, comfort wear, lounge wear, which would be helpful for you in the context that you are in. And people actually had a far more engagement with that than just pushing the best or most profitable or the best selling item, to the user. When it comes to occasion advice, we do a fair bit of content around learning and fashion advisory around specific occasions like wedding, like like a Diwali shopping, like for that matter, you want to shop at a certain occasion where you are going for an interview or you're going for work. So we have identified these typical customer occasions, and got some of the best experts from the industry. These are the Bollywood stylists, and they help create sort of a 20-minute content for people, along with a lot of Q&A that happens live, where people get to ask questions, and get this advice. And topicality conversation, and this is very commonplace across the industry. A lot of brands do this, which is pick up what's active in the industry, or in the consumer's life at that point, whether it is an IPL or, in the above example, we had a lot of street conversation happening at the time. Gully Boy was released in India, and we thought fashion and street could bring a very beautiful combination. And we had this campaign launch, and it was received well by our customers. And then how do we take relevance and inspiration from this content and create shoppability experience for the impulsive customers, right? That's the next piece of the content funnel, where we do a bunch of things. One, we invest in some original IPs, like one that you see on the screen, that's Myntra Fashion Superstar, where it is not just about watching the content, it's about also the interactivity. There is in-app voting, there is shoppable looks on everything that you see from the contestants, right? Everything is shoppable. If you like something, please go ahead and buy it on Myntra, right? So that's the impulsive behavior. If consumers have, we are there to serve you there. And then we have a content destination on Myntra, which is called Myntra Studio, which is sort of a one-stop guide for fashion hacks and tips on Myntra. We collaborate with our partner ecosystem, which are a bunch of these upcoming influencers. There are hundreds of them in this country who are very, very willing to share their fashion expertise and their own fashion enthusiasm with the audiences. And we connect them to our customers in meaningful, personalized, and data-led ways, which helps create a lot more engagement that we typically see them happening even on platforms like Instagram. So that gives us a lot more leverage, given how well we know about the fashion choices of our customers as to what they will be seeking, and what some of these influencers are bringing to the table in terms of their capabilities. So we do a lot of things there in terms of celebrity fashion, gossip, fashion news from across the world. And at the core of it is a very strong personalization engine, using again AI and ML tools, where we onboard customers by asking for a few options, but then we learn a lot from their commerce behavior, and basis that we're able to recommend the right content to them in the right context when they are on the platform. This is our learning, by the way. You see a 16-week graph here, and what we see here is 3 metrics that we look at apart from some of the other metrics, which is day 1 repeat of customers, day 7 repeat of customers, and day 30 repeat of customers, right? So people who repeat after 30 days, 7 days, or the next day, and how that chart trends for people who are coming on Myntra Studio. And as you can see, you get a lot of customers early on, and then it drops, because a lot of people sample, and some of them like, some of them don't like. But if your product market fit is right, and you are able to match the right proposition to the right customer base, these curves will improve over a period of time. And what also happens is the D30 and the D7 curves are the first ones to show the uplift, as you can see in this graph as well, because customers want to try it at certain frequency as they move on, and then as they like it, the frequency increases and increases, and even.
Achint, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but you have a couple more minutes to wrap this up, because we'd also want to get one quick question in from the audience as well. So sure. There's a bit of a time check on that front. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm almost done actually. So I'll just wrap it up in a couple of minutes. So that's just to give you a sense of the repeat curve that we've seen for the studio, and it's still a work in progress for us. The last one is, rewarding the loyalist, which is our insider program. Just as a case study for you, a couple of things there. One is building aspirational privileges, which help people or make them feel special, giving them advisory in terms of a personal stylist, which is something that they don't get when they go outside in general. That's a very specific Myntra curated experience. And the last part is what you see on the left, which is gamifying their experience on making them a better tier customer or a bottom tier customer, and sort of playing between that by upgrading and downgrading people and giving them specific hooks to move up and down, and ensuring that they are constantly engaged with us. Right? So these are some of the examples I thought may be helpful in the context of retaining and ring fencing the existing users that I spoke about. The last one, I think, and the final one is on how to track potential future churn. And there again, it could be a bunch of metrics which you can look at depending on your industry. DAO by WOW and DAO by MAU, which is daily active users to monthly active users, is one such metric, which is a very good engagement metrics and a stickiness metric for the platform. And your daily repeat rates or weekly or monthly repeat rates, what I showed in the previous graph, is the other good metric. But in all of this, I think it's important to think about breaking these metrics by cohorts and seeing which are the cohorts which are performing differently on certain metrics and why is that the case, and that will give you the real insight on what's working and what's not working. Cool. This is the last thing, it is the final objective of retention, which is customer lifecycle value. Everything that you do has to effectively impact this one big metric, for your business, and you can define it in whatever way you want, whether it is a revenue linked or profitability linked, or your sort of profit margin linked. It is your definition which makes sense for your business, but have a definition of CLV, and you can always evolve this definition because it helps you keep all customers at par, from a thinking of what's the best customer cohort and what's the most desired customer behavior that will get you a higher CLV. Okay, so in summary, guys, very quickly, identify your most valuable and loyal user set and prioritize your product experience for them. Nudge and incentivize the other users to get closer to the power user behaviors. And most importantly, people who don't conform to this, don't worry about them. Their churn is good churn for you. Ring-fence your desired users, build emotional equity with them, personalize, engage with content and communities, reward them and actively listen to them for feedback and also including solutions. And lastly, build systems with right instrumentation to allow for a data-led culture of experimentation. I think this will become the key competency in the organization for you to be able to do any of the other 4 things effectively going forward. CLV maximization is the ultimate North Star objective for any business at the end of the day. On that note, thank you so much, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Achint. That was a really insightful session, particularly your points around the 5 golden question framework. That key point that you mentioned midway, where emotional equity is greater than utilitarian equity, I think that makes a lot of sense. We're all emotional creatures at the end of the day. And you rounding it up by saying that CLTV should be any business's North Star metric made a lot of sense. We've got a lot of questions in the Q&A panel. In the interest of time, I would request Achint to answer some of those directly in the panel so that we can also move forward with the event, because we've got a lot of interesting content lined up. But thank you so much, Achint. It's been a pleasure having you on as part of the Virtual Martech Mashup Summit. And I'm sure our audience is going to benefit greatly from your insights. Thank you.